Welcome back. All right, so we're going to do something a little different. Now, when I do season previews, normally I will include, like, here's where I think teams are going to finish. This year I did it different. This year I said, you know what? We'll let the channel have their view known on who they think will finish where. So I had the polls up both on the main channel and on the Entertainment Guy channel to see how close they would be, even though there's going to be a large difference in how many votes you get. And the results were really, really close from one channel to the other. So I think that's great. I think that's a lot of fun. Very happy about that turn of events. And so what I've done is I've gone through all the poll results today, and I've weighted it by where people voted first, second, third, fourth, etc., to come up with what I believe is the channel's prediction for how the standings are going to finish. And it points out a little bit of recency bias here as well. So we'll get into 8th place in the Pacific Division. And the prediction is San Jose will be the 8th place team in that division. They got the most 7th or 8th place votes, and they didn't get very much at the top either. So they end up being 8th in the Pacific. 8th in the Central, the bet is that it will be Arizona. The Arizona Coyotes, this of course has Phoenix. Maybe at some point in time they'll be the Tempe Coyotes, but at this point, Phoenix Coyotes / Arizona Coyotes, whatever name they've gone by, they're at the bottom, according to the predictions, which is not a surprise. Arizona was last place last year, and that's something I'll get into too when we get into how all this turned out. Metropolitan, Philadelphia. Philadelphia's the team that people picked to be 8th place, and if you're looking at the Atlantic, Montreal once again last place with the voting. So let's go ahead and go through this a little bit. There's something I want to point out. From last season, Arizona finished last. Yes, they finished last in that division. So there's that. Philadelphia finished last in that division, and Montreal finished last in that division. San Jose finished 6th in their division. So not quite, but 3 out of 4 are in the same spot they were last year. 7th place in the Pacific is Seattle. So the bet is that Seattle will take a little while longer to build themselves up. They were 8th in the division last year, so either they get better or San Jose gets worse, whatever happens there. 7th in the Central. The bet is that it will be the Chicago Blackhawks, who end up finishing 7th in the Central. And I'm going to go ahead and put a check mark right there because that's where Chicago finished in the Central last year. So, again, there's definitely some rhyming going on here. 7th in the Metro Division. New Jersey voted to be 7th in the Metro Division. That's where they finished last year. Yep, they were 7th in the Metro last year. The bet on 7th in the Atlantic is Buffalo. Buffalo actually finished higher than that last year. Buffalo was 5th. So I guess other people... votes just basically are that Detroit and Ottawa are going to be better than that. So there you go. Buffalo ends up falling back into predictions. 6th in the Pacific Division, Anaheim. Anaheim moves up. So San Jose drops to 8th. According to this prediction, Anaheim and Seattle both move up 1 spot. So very similar to last season. Then we get into 6th place in the Central Division. And the bet is towards Winnipeg, the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets, they finished 6th in the division last year. So, yeah, that's like I said, recency bias definitely plays a role in this, and it's nice to have the vote across the channel to say, hey, look what happened. 6th in the Metro, the vote is towards Columbus, being 6th in the Metro. That's where they finished in the Metro last season. 6th, the bet is towards Detroit, being 6th in the Atlantic, and that is where Detroit finished last year in the Atlantic. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams so far out of 12 being picked to finish the exact same spot they finished last season. This is where predictions get kind of murky, right? All right, moving into 5th place in the Pacific Division, the bet is towards Vancouver. The Vancouver Canucks finishing 5th. That's where they finished last year in the Pacific, was 5th place. So, there you go. 5th place in the Central, Dallas. So, did Dallas finish 5th? They actually finished 4th. So, this is a drop down for Dallas, according to the predictions. And if you believe that 5 in the Central and 3 in the Pacific are going to make it again, Dallas would be the cutoff, right? So we shall see if that is in fact the case. Number 5 in the Metro, Islanders. So the New York Islanders, and guess what? Yep, that's where the Islanders finished last season. 5th in the Atlantic Division. The bet is towards the Ottawa Senators. So they switched places with Buffalo. Detroit stays in 6th. Ottawa ends up in 5th. And Buffalo in 7th. So of the 5th place teams, 2 out of 4 are in the same spot they were last season. Then we get up to 4th spot. And the channel said LA. So the LA Kings would actually drop a spot from where they were last year. Could potentially find themselves outside the playoffs, depending on whether it's 5-3 or 4-4. And then on the Central side of things, it is Nashville. Nashville moves up 1 spot according to the prediction. They just flip places with the Dallas Stars. So not a lot of difference there. 4th place in the Metro Division is, according to the prediction, Washington, and that's where they finished last season. So the Metro, people just, I guess, when they were doing their bets, they were like, well, who finished 1st, 2nd, 3rd? Or the bet is just, hey, these are the best teams, and I don't see any reason that's going to change. Number 4 in the Atlantic, Boston. So Boston was in that position last year, and honestly, as a Boston fan, I have to say that would be frustrating. You'd be looking at Boston being a wild card going into the playoffs, and I wouldn't like their odds as a wild card against a top team in either division. So that would kind of feel like spinning your wheels a little bit. 3rd place in the Pacific, the bet is towards Vegas. Vegas swapping spots with LA. So I'll get into that too at the end of this. And I'm not just going to do the check marks. I'll do something else at the end too, because it's really interesting to me. We'll see if it's interesting to people on the internet or not. That's the thing. You post a video and you go, is it interesting? The vote count and the view count and all this would say no. But anyways, yeah, Vegas at 3rd would be a switch of places with the LA Kings. 3rd in the Central, Minnesota ends up getting 3rd place in the Central according to the voting done on both channels. And they were 2nd last year. So really honestly, and it was a dogfight between themselves and St. Louis late in the season too. 3rd place in the Metro is Pittsburgh. And if you're like, wait, didn't Pittsburgh finish 3rd in the Metro last year? Yes, they did. They absolutely did. 3rd in the Atlantic, and this doesn't really surprise me that Florida gets the vote for 3rd. You're going to get votes for Toronto to be top 2. You're going to get that from Toronto fans, but also there will be people who think that Florida overachieved a little bit. They got to pull back. May look at what Tampa Bay did. They won the President's Trophy, and then they were 3rd place in their division twice in a row and won the Stanley Cup both times. So this may be a situation where they're looking and going, well, we're for Tampa, so maybe, right? So we'll see whether or not the Florida Panthers end up 3rd and if that helps them come playoff time. 2nd place in the Pacific, Calgary. So with Calgary in 2nd place, that would put Edmonton into 1st place in the division. That'd be the first time Edmonton had won a division, and it feels like a long time since Edmonton won a division. It feels like it's been a long time. So if that does happen that way, that'd mean for some fun Battle of Alberta stuff, as these teams would be battling it out for 1st place. That's all we've ever wanted as hockey fans. 2nd place in the Central Division, the bet goes towards St. Louis being 2nd, which means Colorado ending up in 1st place, which should be to the surprise of no one. And they, of course, finished 1st in the division last year. So the interesting thing is, in the Pacific, only 1 team in the same spot that they were last year, according to the vote. In the Central, 4. Now we get to the ridiculousness that's the Metro Division. And thanks to the vote, 2nd place goes to the New York Rangers, which means 1st place goes to the Carolina Hurricanes. And you got it. That is exactly how the Metropolitan Division finished last season. So, the channel says nothing's changing in the Metro. I'm sorry to New Jersey, Columbus, the Islanders, and Philly. Apparently, season's not started. We haven't even got to training camp. But again, the perception is this is how things are going to finish up. Number 2, in the Atlantic, would be Toronto, according to the vote. And that's the same spot they were in last year, which would put Tampa Bay in first place. So what's interesting is, go ahead and get this other marker here, is that last season, Tampa was third. Florida was first. Ottawa was seventh. Buffalo was fifth. Those are the switches. So 4 teams in the Atlantic are, according to the vote, finishing where they did last year, and then there's 4 teams that have just swapped spots here. Last year in the Central, the St. Louis Blues were third. Minnesota was second. Nashville was fifth. Dallas was fourth. And then the rest are check marks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16, 17 out of 32 teams are being predicted to finish in the same place. And a lot of them are being predicted to finish really, really close to where they finished last season. In the Pacific, it's kind of the same thing. The Oilers were second. Calgary was first. Vegas was fourth. LA was third. For Anaheim, they were 7th. Seattle was 8th. And San Jose was 6th. So, yeah, the voting shows that there's definitely some recency bias. And there's going to be surprises this year. Teams that I think could surprise, one in each division that I think might be underrated. I think Vancouver does get underrated at least a bit. And I'm not saying they necessarily pass LA, but I think they do get underrated. Their recent entire history is probably part of the reason why. Over in the Central, I think Winnipeg, taken lightly a little bit. I was kind of surprised to see Winnipeg finishing 6th in the voting. And then in the Metro, I do like what Columbus has done, but I think New Jersey at 7th, to me, feels low. It feels like New Jersey could move up, but it's going to be tough because the Islanders, well-coached, really solid veteran team. And then you've got Columbus, who've added Johnny Gaudreau. They've added Goodbranson. There are some good parts, too, with Columbus. So I'm not sure who New Jersey knocks down. But I'm keeping an eye on the Capitals and the Penguins as older teams, same as Boston in the Atlantic. Once an older team suddenly looks older, that's when it's done. And then, of course, out here in the Atlantic, you've got the Tampa Bay switch with Florida, the Ottawa switch with Buffalo. I think Buffalo's underrated here. I also think that Ottawa ahead of Detroit. I think they'll be fighting. I think they'll be close to one another. I don't know how close to the playoffs that's going to be. So if you believe it's going to be 4-4 in the East, it means none of the teams that missed the playoffs last year in the East would make it this year. None of the teams that made the playoffs last year would make it this next season. And again, that's why they play the games, as Don Taylor says. And it's honestly, it's part of what I love about covering this sport. I actually do like that it's 32 teams. It's 4 divisions of 8. I think this is the most fun I've ever had trying to figure out who's going to finish where with hockey. And my predictions likely won't be that far off from this, but I'm not as bullish on Boston. I could see Pittsburgh ending up 4th. I could see Pittsburgh ending up 5th in this division as well, depending on what the Islanders do for an encore if they can bounce back. And then out west, it could be truly crazy. I don't think the Pacific is as weak as people say that it is, although 3 teams in the Pacific made it, 5 in the Central last year, but Vegas was very, very close. They were 3 points back. Vancouver was only 5 points back of a playoff spot. Winnipeg was 8 points back of a playoff spot. When you're within 10 points, I don't think that that's a huge difference over an 82-game schedule. And then, of course, in the East, the closest you got was the New York Islanders. They were 16 points back. But if you think about it this way, and I've seen people say, well, they have to make up 16 points. Not really. Let's say they gain 8. All they need is a team ahead of them to lose 9. So that's, and that would have to be the Capitals were the team they were 16 points back. But if they got that, and if the Capitals fell back, and as crazy as some might think, I don't think it's that crazy to say that could happen. The Capitals dropping a bit, and maybe the Islanders having a bounce back under a new coach. And yeah, it will be interesting to see how it turns out because there was such a huge divide between the teams inside the playoffs and outside the playoffs in the East that from about early December, there was no tension about who was going to make the playoffs. The conversation was, so who's going to beat who and who's going to play who, and does it matter? And then when you look at how it turned out, Tampa Bay won it again, so it didn't really matter who finished where. Tampa Bay was just going to steamroll to the Stanley Cup final again. So we'll see how it turns out this year. and we'll see whether or not Toronto can get out of the first round. I will be doing polls on the channel. Likely in regards to the teams and where they're finishing and all that fun stuff. And I'll be sharing those results in a video as well. And I will be making my own predictions. I'm just saving them for a little bit later than normal. And I thought it would be fun to let you, the viewer, have the vote first. And for your votes to be up there and to show, once again, betting on who's going to make that jump. So I've talked about this recently in a few different videos. Betting on which of the teams that's below the playoff line, that's maybe going through a rebuild, betting on which one's going to make that jump, get into the playoffs, and be competitive, can really help you with fantasy hockey, to be honest. And you end up looking pretty smart. If you take Buffalo right now, you go, you know what? I think Buffalo's going to make the playoffs, and you get all your friends telling you you're crazy, and then they do. You've got a little bit of credentials there with your friends the next time around. They might listen to you a little bit more, but of course, if Buffalo flames out, well, you may have to get new friends. But yeah, so there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Who's too low? Who's too high on the board? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for all the voting you've been doing. And again, it's not done. We will be doing more before the season gets started. I'm looking forward to that and letting you guys know the results and all that fun stuff. So thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon. And of course, I'm wearing Seals because San Jose is doing a throwback to the Seals. So I figured, why not wear a Seals jersey? Thanks again for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.